just going on to Class Q, what type of building structures on the farm are suitable for Class Q?
So there's a number of criteria, but if we're just talking about structures for a moment, you'd be surprised what we can get through under Class Q. So certainly things like sort of, traditional brick or stone barns, but very often actually local planning authorities support those through a full planning application anyway. So we tend to advise not to sort of waste Class Q on those, because we can normally get planning permission to convert those anyway. So then we move on, and quite often we use Class Q for steel frame barns, roll top Dutch barns, breeze block buildings, old parlours, at cost buildings as well, so concrete frames, So the ones where we really can't are timber sort of pole barns, the ones that have been made out of old telegraph poles and tin stuck to them, things like that. Anything that's quite sort of rickety, not meant to last, it really has to be permanent and of substantial construction. But the construction can be modern, steel frame buildings. It can be really not what you think.
So that's where the planning strategy comes in, because you might look at a series of buildings and say, well, hold on a minute, we can get full planning permission for this and utilise our Class Q permitted for the other barns.
And then further to the strategy, we've been able to and regularly do it where we you can get Class Q to convert a steel frame barn, but it won't look particularly nice. So actually we've been able to then substitute that Class Q for a new build plot instead, whatever that looks like, whether it still looks like a barn, but actually you could move it around, you can reorientate it, you could split it, make it lower, smaller, fatter, thinner, just make it a nicer design from what would otherwise be your Class Q conversion. So then actually your strategy, if you take a mixed farmyard, your strategy is do the Class Q first, then you can look at the scheme as a whole. So then you bring in your barns for conversion plus some new builds, and then you can do a scheme which works out the parking, the amenity, the landscaping, the access as a whole. But then of course you've got to take into account, is the farmer retaining a house, some land around it? So there's lots of things that come into that. So very much a strategy, but we can take, I think people are quite regularly surprised by how many units we can sometimes get onto a farm. This is obviously, we're talking about a complete redevelopment or something here, but
which is where a planning consultant is so valuable.
And yes, it is. And a useful thing perhaps maybe to highlight is the difference between a planning consultant and an architect, which is something that we get asked quite regularly, because I think probably the thing to say is where we're thinking about strategy or rural planning, a planning consultant is your first starting point, because they will establish whether you can get planning for what you want. An architect obviously is the person that can help you design that and to do the drawings and whatnot. But if you can't get the planning in the first place, there's no point in having the drawings. We had an inquiry from somebody who was looking for a rural workers dwelling, and the architect, he'd gone straight to the architect. The architect had charged him several £1,000s to do beautiful drawings. They were beautiful, but we were never going to be able to get him planning. So it was totally the wrong way around. And they wouldn't have known that, but it was incumbent, in my opinion, of the architect to say that. Let's go and find out if we can get you planning, and then I'll draw your house. And so that's the difference between a planning consultant and an architect, which we do get asked.